Happy Father's Day, everybody. We'll get started in about 4 or 5 minutes. Can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. It's a great day here. It's actually 72 degrees, sunny, a bit windy, but I'll take it over those 90-degree days we've been having. So we'll get started at 3:15, and this is going to be a 5-part series, and it's very special and important to me. One of the things that I've been doing with Community Ecology Institute, I'm a board member there. I work at the Freetown Farm Initiative, is teaching people how to grow food. And with, the soaring cost of food right now, a lot of people are struggling. So I'm hoping all of you will join me. The chat will stay active in replays. And put down your thoughts for helping new gardeners get started. And I really want to start with almost free, the lowest possible cost, just to get people growing some food. Now, it's not going to replace the grocery store, but it can help them supplement their food. And it can also teach people to really kind of get dirty in the garden and then begin to expand and grow more. So I really want this to be something that all of us are doing to help out the new gardeners. Yes, Urban Chicken Mama, sweet potatoes love the heat. Any donations you make on Super Chat will also go to Freetown Farm for the barn renovation. That's going to be a community center, a teaching center, a gathering place. So anything that you donate here or through the donation button goes to the Community Ecology Institute, which I appreciate if you're in a position to donate. So I'll take a few questions while we wait for 3:15 to start. Yeah, I see. Some people will say 100, 109 for the heat. It's 72 now. It's perfect. Like, I wish the weather was always like this. But it's crazy. It's all over the place. Thank you, Anonymous. Oh my goodness. Thank you for a $250 donation. It goes 100% to the Community Ecology Institute. We don't take any of that money towards salaries. It's going right to the donation to build that barn. Very, very appreciated. And one of the things that is happening is the costs keep going up. So we were kind of at, let's raise $500,000. Let's get this barn renovated. Let's make it a community center. It's going to be offices too. It'll be a gathering place. And government bureaucracy has delayed getting it started for 8 months now, which is insane. But in that 8 months, now the cost is $600,000. It's going to work out, but I greatly appreciate the donation. Thank you. Very, very thankful. It makes a difference. One of the things that I'm doing is I just did a series on growing your own food security. We're going to do this live event together. And I actually just talked with Kiara, who is the director, and she's the one who found Community Ecology Institute, CEI, all these wonderful programs within that. I'm going to do seminars, free seminars for any community members that want to come out and learn how to grow food. We're not going to charge them. We'll give them some plants from our greenhouse, whatever we have. But I just want people to get started growing because it can make a difference. And we'll talk more about that as soon as we get started. We'll wait a couple more minutes. Lisa, I don't have any powdery mildew on my cukes yet, but I know it's coming. Any recommendations on which preventative spray to treat first? So, people are going to get mad, but Daconil is a chemical. It's not organic. It works really well, especially when there's no fruit on the plants. It stays there. If you don't want to use something that's a chemical, human-made, baking soda works, oil sprays work, but the whole idea is really to pick what you like and then stick to a routine. So you thinking about that coming now is a really good idea. and you just start spraying now, and you do it every 10 to 14 days. It's more important for the routine than the actual product. Urban Chicken Mama. So the other thing that we're doing is Kim from Cali Kim and Jerry and I have become good friends over the last 10 years. She is coming down here from the West Coast. We are doing a ticketed event at Freetown Farm. It's this Saturday. I will put a link in there for tickets, but I think there's only maybe half a dozen tickets left. Anyway, it's a $15 ticket donation to the farm. And she and I are going to just talk gardening, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. We'll be kind of out there selling plants to the people, but it'll give us a chance to interact with everybody. But we're going to record it to answer the question, and yes, it will go up here in some form on our YouTube channels. All right, here's the last question. Melanie Castillo. What is your best suggestion for killing weeds between beds without killing the plants in the beds? They come right up through the landscape fabric. So, I mean, pulling them, of course, it's a pain. I don't worry so much about that now. I just take a weed eater and I go through my garden and just whack them down. A lot of stuff, if you keep cutting the green off with the weed eater, the roots will starve, it will die off. If you don't want to do that, on the outer edge, you can use 30% vinegar. It will acidify the soil, kill them off. I wouldn't that close to your bed use, the chemical weed killers, but maybe late fall or early spring, I would. A little bit along there to kill off problems isn't going to wreck your garden, but that's really up to you. And all right, one more. Elizabeth, I've heard some diluted milk helps powdery mildew. That's true. So there's can't recall off the top of my head, but there's a reaction with the proteins in milk and sunlight that reacts on the leaf, and it kills off different fungi. So it does work. It's pretty cool. If you can get milk that's not homogenized and pasteurized, which is very hard to do, it works better, but you don't want to use skim milk. You want to use whole milk, and it does make a difference. All right, so let's get started. I hope we have some new gardeners here. So this live is all about helping people grow their food security. And as gardeners, some of us, like me, I hate to look back, but 30 plus years, I'm getting older. Some of you just have gotten started. You're in year 2, 3, 4, 5, but all of us have great experience of success, of failure. One of the things that I found for trying to help new gardeners get involved is they start looking online and they start seeing, they can only use compost. They have to do a no-dig garden. They have to have specialized organic fertilizers, dry, slow release, water soluble fertilizers. You need a certain amount of sun. You can't do this. You can't do that. You have to do this. And for us to have experience, we kind of got started, we're growing, and we learn about that stuff. But a new gardener's hit with all of that. So I'm not saying anything is wrong or anything is right. What this series is, it's going to be 5 parts. It's going to be starting with no money, if we can do that, and then show people how to build up their garden beds, get some things planted, and then we can move into more of the specialized stuff that I'm talking about. I hope that makes sense. So if you have a thought of what might be helpful to any new gardeners, please just put it in a comment and people will be able to read that. And maybe just in capital letters, do like asterisk, new gardening tip or something like that so people can find it easily. So I'm going to start at the beginning, and anything that kind of makes you think or you want to add, please add into the comments. So we're starting with Earthbeds, and we're starting with that you do have to have some land or property. We'll talk about containers in other series. So the first thing, if you have land, you only need about a 3-foot wide row that you would just dig, and something that's 8 foot long. And you basically remove the grass, kind of hill it up a little bit, and you just use your earth right there. If you're digging in a place that has grass and weeds growing, you have enough fertilizer and care in that space for your plants to grow this year. You want to remove the greenery, 3 feet wide, 8 feet long, and you can do 10, 12, 14, whatever you want, but a 3 foot by 8 foot kind of rectangle in your garden or in your earth will work perfectly. You want to loosen that. So you want to dig down. You're not going to kill the microbiology. They figure it out. Everything will be fine. Don't worry about hearing that you can't turn your soil. That is partially true. We'll talk about that another day. So you're loosening up the soil. That means water will drain through it. There'll be oxygen through there for the plant roots. It'll be a good place. So the first thing that you want to do is go outside 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 p.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m., 6 p.m. And you want to pick the spot that has direct sun hitting it. And you want 8 hours. Yes, you can garden with less. More is better. But you want to pick that spot that has 8 hours of sun. And I guess before I say that, I probably should say middle of June, beginning of July, you still have plenty of time to start a summer garden and supplement, food to your table from the grocery store. We'll talk about 3 crops that I like, and I hope you guys add in some more crops. That would be wonderful. And also, if you have questions, also type in big letters question. It makes it easier for me to follow this. So sunlight, you're getting 8 hours. You're making your bed 3 feet wide. You're removing the grass. You're putting it into a compost pile. Now, if you have room for composting, I should say, you want like a 4 foot by 4 foot space, and you can put your leaves, your grass clippings, edgings all into that. And that'll be something you can use next year. I'm going to assume you don't have a ton of compost because you're just getting started, or maybe you don't have the space for it. So we're setting up that bed. The other thing that you're looking for where you place your bed is to make sure that after a rainstorm, whatever water may collect there, it disappears within an hour, that it drains. And you may have to move the bed if you're at a very low part of your property where the water pools. You don't necessarily want that. It can cause root rot. But that's rare. If it rains really hard, you go over to your garden, it looks like it drained, you're good to go. So now let's say you don't have land, and today we are focusing on land. You can start talking with friends, family, neighbors, churches that have available land. And what you can do is say, I want to grow a garden. I want to learn to be more self-sufficient. I want to have some more food security. I'll share the space with you. You give me the space, I'll grow plants, vegetables, and I'll give you some of the harvest. And that can really work too. All right. So now we kind of have the basics set up for getting out into the garden. When you look at my garden, I don't know, it's like 80 by 60 feet. I have all kinds of gardens. You don't need a massive garden. Again, 3 feet wide, 8 feet long. That will get you started with the 3 crops that I want to talk about. All right, let me check for questions. So any comments you have on getting the earth set up and getting your garden started, that would be great to throw in there now. Yeah, Melly Castillo says you can lay down a thick layer of cardboard. You can start on that. That's better though when you have soil to bring from somewhere or compost to put right on it. So I'm making the assumption that, times are definitely tough and people are struggling just to buy food. So if you lay down cardboard, you can get that for free for sure. You can put it on the grass. It kills off the grass. And then on top of that, you need to put about 6-8 inches of compost, or you have to bring soil in from elsewhere. That's a nice way to start a large garden. For right now, remove the grass, turn the soil, we're going to plant right into that. And over time, we can build that up, when we have more money or you learn new skills or you've got your own compost going. Baking soda spray works. That's for Lisa. Elizabeth, good question. Can a compost bin be in a pile or does it need a vessel? No, you don't need a barrel. Barrels are something you put stuff in, you spin. I find they get really heavy. For the amount of compost I need, I just like layering it in piles. 4 feet wide, 5 feet wide by 4 feet by 5 feet. Just a big square, 4 foot square, 5 foot square. Just layer your materials on there. Unknown. Now, I didn't come here to plug my book, but I have a book called, I'll put it up, The Modern Homestead Garden. And I can never tell if it's backwards or not in the video. Anyway, you can pick that up at Amazon. It's for beginners, intermediate gardeners, and it really breaks things down simply. Jason of the Great Awakening, $12 for a head of lettuce in South Australia last week. Crazy, right? All right. So now that we have that basic bed set up, what can you plant in there? When the soil temperatures now with summer here in the US, North America, when those temperatures get to 60 degrees, when that soil temperature is 60 degrees and warmer, cucumber seeds, squash, melons, zucchini, tomatoes, beans all germinate anywhere from as little as 3 days to 7 days. You don't need to go buy transplants. You don't have to be growing your own seed starts indoors to get food into the ground now, to get your plants into the ground now. So we can direct seed. They are going to take off. Once they germinate, because again, the ground is 60 plus, the surrounding temperatures are 70, 80, and even 90s in some places, those plants will double, if not triple, every 5 to 7 days until they get to size. So they're going to produce really, really quickly. Plants that I recommend right now: green beans, Kentucky pole beans. Pole beans will need something to be trellised on, like a big couple of stakes. Tree branches work perfectly fine. When they get above a 5 or 6 foot pole, you just bend the tip down and you guide it down, and then you put another one next to it, and then you let that bean grow up that pole. So you don't need 8, 10, 12 foot poles for pole beans. They will vine out that long in some cases. So I recommend in your 3 foot wide, 8 foot strip of earth that you loosened up and slightly mounded, you're going to put 6, let's say 4 to 8 bean seeds right in the middle. In my video that I actually made, I put the beans in the wrong place. By putting the beans in the middle of your 8 foot bed and putting your trellising poles right there, they don't take up much of a footprint, and they're going to go straight up. On the right side, somewhere towards the end of your 8 foot rectangle, you're going to put in 3 tomato seeds, any cherry tomato variety that you want. That's going to need a post to be trellised on too. Cherry tomatoes will germinate. They will take off really quickly, and they're going to grow. You put it on the end because some of the kind of width of the plant can kind of hang over your 8 foot bed. So that's on one side. On the other side, you're going to put in a squash plant or a zucchini plant. 3 seeds for tomatoes. If they all come up, you thin to 1 plant. 3 seeds for your zucchini plant. If they all come up, you remove 2 of them and you just keep the strongest plant. You'll be able to get zucchini or squash really with the temperatures now, probably as little as 30 days to 40 days from germination, maybe even sooner. They will just take off and they're just going to do their thing. It's a perfect time to start. And that's what I want to stress. You did not miss getting a summer garden started right now. So you want the green zucchini over here. I don't know why I said green zucchini. They're all green. So you have squash that are normally yellow. You have zucchini. And over on the other side, you have the tomatoes. Then you have that 6 foot space in between. Those plants are going to fill up some of that. And right in the middle, you have a nice kind of trellis of green beans growing. That will get you started. So let me look for questions in here. And if you can think of any fast growing crops that some of the new gardeners want to start, go ahead and put them in there. This series will be about 5 videos. We'll also, and I'm going to do this over June, July, August, maybe into September. We'll talk about getting cool weather crops in too for the fall. But right now, this should get people started. Kaylee, Gary, concerned about the contaminated soil that was sold in the Southeast US, UK, and parts of Europe. Jessica Sowers, others helping Soil 3 get to the bottom of it. That, you know what? I haven't heard about that. So it's always a concern. I don't know what it is contaminated with. Jessica does a great job, so I would trust her in what she's talking about if she's mentioning the product, and maybe check out her channel, find out what's going on. Elizabeth, after layering in 6 to 8 inches of compost on cardboard, can you plant into it? Yes, you can. If it's compost that is 100% fully broken down, you know that it's quality stuff, you can plant right into it. The plant root systems will go right through that cardboard like it's nothing. Okay. Just double checking. All right. So the whole idea is that you can have a garden, you can start growing food with a small space. You don't need any of the fancy containers that I have. You don't need raised beds. You don't need fabric pots. Those are all beautiful, and I love them, and I like how they look, and I've acquired them over time. But to get started, again, 3 feet wide, 8 foot long, just a nice planting rectangle. That will definitely get you started. I picked green beans because they're full of vitamins and minerals. They work really well raw. I love eating them right off the vine. They're very prolific. Just keep picking them. You can steam them, you can cook them, etc. You can cook green beans and cherry tomatoes together. It makes a wonderful kind of sauce, even if you're just kind of simmering them away. A great side dish. I like the zucchini or squash because they make great meals that go along with dinner. You can eat them when they're smaller in salads. You can stew them into a soup when they get bigger and stuff like that. Cherry tomatoes are great off the vine. They're great in salads. You can actually pick enough cherry tomatoes that you could kind of make a sauce out of them, mix it with rice, you get a side dish. And you might be getting the idea. I picked 3 vegetables that I feel can really be used together for side dishes with dinner. There's a lot of other crops you can grow, like cucumbers. I love them, but they're not so packed full of nutrition like the other plants. And they're hard to kind of use besides in cucumber salads or eating them raw. Or, with your salad. So any other vegetables you can think of are great. You can actually grow potatoes now. That's a little more technical with the sense that they're going to need a little bit more space. But if you have some experience and you want to grow new potatoes, which are kind of like baby tomatoes, not tomatoes, potatoes, you can just use those little potatoes you get from the store. Let them sit somewhere warm in the house. And when they start putting out vining, it's called chitting, chitting. That means they're getting ready to grow. And you can plant them in about 70 days, you're going to have potatoes. So potatoes aren't lost yet either. I put some in end of June and July, and I will harvest again come September. You just need about 70 days of warmth. Rebecca, I'm glad you're loving the cedar raised bed. Thomasina just talked about growing strawberries in a 5-tier stackable tower. I just harvested tons of strawberries. I have 4 towers that I'm doing that with. You can set that up in the future for fresh fruit by growing strawberries. Another good suggestion, which I don't have a lot of experience doing yet, is somebody said you can make pickles out. Sorry, lost it. You can make pickles. You can basically take cucumbers, you can pickle them. So you can jar your food, you can pickle, you can can, that's a little more elaborate, you can freeze. So you can also start getting these harvests and freezing them if you don't really know where to begin. That works. And then you can also learn to pickle and you can learn to can. And Ann Temple says, I make roasted cherry tomato pasta sauce. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to imagine you can roast the cherry tomatoes in a Pyrex pan in an oven. You can maybe even roast them on a grill and then collect them. You just don't want them to split and all the great juice goes into the grill. But that could be used to make a great sauce. And it could be rustic, like you just roast it. Maybe you chop it up. You still have seeds in it. You still have the skin. You do some pasta. You put that right over the top. It's going to be absolutely delicious, like she says. So Colin asks, how do you interplant herbs or flowers for pest control? That's a really big question. So it's really hard to answer now. I'm not convinced every herb or companion plant does wonders, but you just start popping them in different places, right along the edges of the raised beds, and you see what plants seem to do the best. Lillian asks, can you use neem oil that is about a year old? Yeah, I think neem oil is good for about 2 years. It may also get thick and it may be congealed. Just put it into warm tap water. It'll liquefy and you can use the neem oil for your spraying. All right. So I mean, what would you say to somebody that's struggling paycheck to paycheck? They do have some property, they do have some land, they don't know where to begin. And I'm going to keep stressing that is people who haven't gardened before don't have our experience to be able to say, yeah, it takes some work and it can be a challenge, but it's not that difficult. Any thoughts on what you might say to them to kind of encourage them to get started? And Laura Grubb said, my concerns with food security started last year, so I grew things I could store. Lots of winter squash, just canned the last of last year's harvest. So canning is a great way to go. It's a good skill to learn. It's not expensive to get started. And people have been doing it for hundreds of years. That was the only way to store stuff. You could ferment. You could use acidic vinegar. You could can. That's the way that it was done. Sharon Shoyat, if I got your last name right, she grows tomatoes and zucchini and she makes her own pasta sauce. That's what I do too. I take any tomato that I'm growing, throw it in a pot, start the boil. I'll throw in pieces of eggplant, zucchini, squash, and you just let it reduce down by like 2/3. And I get an immersion blender. I just puree it. It takes care of all the skin, the seeds. Let it cool. I put it in Ziploc bags. I lay them flat. I put paper towels between them and I freeze them. And it looks like, for those of you that are older, it looks like a record album. It's a nice square, maybe this thick. And I just pull them out over the winter, let them defrost, and then I use them for my sauces. And Isabel Wagner says, thanks for encouraging people to get started. That's the other thing is you can, I want to stress, start by seed. You're going to go to Home Depot. People already know that I'm upset with some of the prices of plants there. You don't have to spend $4.98 for a cucumber plant. That's just crazy. You don't have to spend $4.98 for a tomato plant unless you want to. If you went in and you said, like my garden, say I wanted 12 tomato plants, 10 pepper plants, you know, $5 a plant, let's round up with tax. That's 60, that's 50, that's $110. That's crazy. For $110, you could buy some soil, you could buy some fertilizer, which we'll talk about, but you can buy a pack of seeds. So if you're getting started, $2 a pack of zucchini seeds. You're going to put in 3 seeds, you're going to keep 1 plant. You're going to have enough to plant again in July because diseases and pests will kill that plant. So you plant again. You'll be able to maybe plant again in August, but you could have extra seeds that you can use next year. It won't cost you any money. Same for the beans, same for the tomato plants, same for any seed. You can put them in a Ziploc bag, put the seed pack in there that you open in a Ziploc bag, keep it in your house. They're going to stay fresh and viable for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I've germinated tomato seeds that were, I think, 12 years old. People have germinated seeds that have been sitting around for decades. You don't have to keep spending money. So in this case, it's really cool because all you did was you built your rectangle. You put in your labor, you cleared the surface, you built your garden, you spent maybe $7 in seeds for your tomatoes, your beans, and your squash. You planted them. Now, once they're planted, you want to water them every other day. Soak it in. You can't overwater in the earth, really. And you want to water them in every other day for a good 7 to 10 days till they're established. Based on the weather conditions after that, you probably want to water 2, 3, 4 times a week. That's going to vary. But if you're in doubt, water your plants. And thank you, Anonymous, for a $30 donation. So I greatly, greatly appreciate that. People are going to be thrilled. Like when we're done here, I'm going to let people know that money's coming in. This will be going to the barn. We do all kinds of stuff there. Like I manage the greenhouse. We sell plants there for about $2. We give lots of plants away. We're really trying to work with the community to teach them how to garden and do everything that we do. What I love about all of us, I mean, every garden is just about as diverse as we are as people. Gardeners are all over the world. We don't care much about differences. We're all different, but what we care about is, what is that spot on my tomato plant? Why aren't my cucumbers thriving? Why are they turning yellow? My cucumbers kind of taste bitter. My basil's flowering. It's not growing. All these, common concerns that we share throughout the world. I think that's awesome. All right, so we got the watering down. Now, here's the thing. People are going to get worried that they don't have compost, so I can't have a garden. They're going to go to the store and they're going to see the dry organic granular fertilizers, and they can be anywhere from $8 for a 3-pound bag to $17 because of just advertising. So what I would say to that is, if you're able to afford an organic granular fertilizer, buy whatever is the cheapest. You want 3 things to be represented. You'll see like a number like 5-3-2 or 4-4-1. That's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are the 3 elements, the 3 nutrients that your plants need the most. Most organic fertilizers, the dry fertilizer, which are slow release, have the same things in it: blood meal, bone meal, chicken manure, feather meal, all kinds of stuff. So you would buy whatever is the least expensive. The way you use it, is you turn your 3 foot by 8 foot space. I might have said 4 feet because that's what my raised beds are. But when you're just doing a mound in the earth, 3 feet is perfectly fine. You would just take a big handful of the organic granular and you sprinkle it over the top of your soil that you turned, 1/3, another handful right down the middle, 2/3, another handful right across the top. Well, or the 3/3, which is a hole. And then you just kind of use your hands to kind of mix it into the top of the soil. The dry organic fertilizers are slow release. So soil microbiology, the microbes have to sort of attack the fertilizer you put in. They digest it, they break it down, and they change it into a form of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium your plants can use and take in through the root system. So that's great for 4-6 weeks down the line when your plants are growing. If you can't afford that organic granular right now, purchase some water-soluble fertilizer. Now, some people are going to get mad when I say this. If you can only afford $6 or $8 box of the chemical type fertilizers made by people, go ahead and buy that. It's not going to harm you. It's not going to harm your plant. You don't want to use that over and over again, year after year. But it's okay to use now if you just want to grow some food that's healthy for you. Those fertilizers aren't going to hurt you. And it's like Miracle Grow, which people don't like the company. There's, I think, Vigoro, there's Plant Expert, any of them. They're just cheaper because they can be made more cheaply. You could go with fish emulsion. Now, fish emulsion comes in a gallon container. I use that all the time. It's organic, but it is about $22 for a gallon. That can be expensive. That gallon will probably last you easily the year for those 3 plants. But if you're planting more, you may have to buy more of the more of the water-soluble fertilizers. So these water-soluble fertilizers, you mix in water, just follow the directions. You pour them into the root base, just a quick 3, 4, 5 seconds. You don't need to put a whole gallon on every plant. And that will give the plants the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that they can absorb quickly and green up and grow and do their thing. Right now, if you have to pick between organic granular, the dry stuff, slow release, and the water soluble, go with the water soluble. If you have the money, pick up an organic water soluble. That's better for the soil. And I know we all have opinions about organic gardening. I try and stay 95% organic. I will use some of the other products, but this isn't about a debate on whether you're organic or not. This is about helping people have more food security and teaching them how to garden. Once they get started, we can start talking more about organic in better ways. And that's absolutely having tons of compost where you don't have to buy the water solubles. You don't have to buy the organic granular. You don't have to spend money. Your leaves, your grass, your weeds are all food scraps are all breaking down into compost that feeds your soil. Feeding your soil takes care of your plants. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's see what else we have question-wise. All right. Here's a question from J. Steves. Green zucchini question. I have a zucchini growing off my plant. Everything looks great, but now half the same zucchini turn yellow and wilty. So on zucchini plants, on squash plants, you have the female. The female flower will come up. Right behind it is a little tiny baby squash or zucchini. The flower opens. You have other flowers that are male flowers. It's just a long stem. Flower opens. If pollen from the male flower doesn't go to the female flower that has that little tiny baby zucchini on there, that zucchini will grow to about this tall, and then it will start to brown out and die off. And that's because it wasn't pollinated. And Sharon says, thanks for that 3 or 4 seconds fertilizing each plant. That's the kind of stuff new gardeners don't know, and some of us don't know yet. So when you buy any of the water-soluble fertilizers, it's going to say probably 1 or 2 tablespoons per gallon of water. And then it stops. So it's not like you have to put that whole gallon right on a tomato plant. That 1 gallon could really cover, let's see, I did 1, 2, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 tomato plants just by hitting them real quick, 4 or 5 seconds all the way across. So that's how you use the water-soluble fertilizer. Let me check it. Any more for questions? All right. So how often do you fertilize? So again, starting with your new garden, you put in the seeds, you're watering every day, or I'm sorry, you're watering every other day. Seeds germinate. For that first week after germination, they actually live off of some of the seed coat. So that gives them some fertilizer. You've had grass and you've had weeds growing there. Stuff has died and decayed. You have fertilizer in there. So that's going to help your plants along. The water soluble, and let's just say for the first round, that's what we pick. We don't have the organic granular slow release, the dry stuff. After that plant has been growing 7 or 10 days, hit it with a couple seconds of the water-soluble fertilizer and watch it. If they're nice and green and they're doing well, you don't need to feed them that week. If they look like they're struggling for some reason, in about 7 days, 4 or 5 seconds of that water-soluble fertilizer. When plants are first getting started, you can really give them, that quick dose of the water-soluble fertilizers. I use fish emulsion all the time. When they're small, every 14 days or so. When they get bigger, maybe every 10 days. When they're really big, maybe every 7 days. But it doesn't have to be that often. You really have to kind of just take a look at your plants. And if they look like they're green and they're growing, you can kind of adjust how often you give them the water-soluble fertilizer. So anyway, thanks for the donation for 20. So I wonder, I appreciate people being anonymous, but I wonder if, depending on how you donate through the button, if it just doesn't come across that way. I know that if you do the super chat too and donate, your name comes up, and that super chat donation will also go to the Community Ecology Institute. Because I linked this live to the donation, everything goes towards them. Anybody who is also donating will have a record of that, and we'll be glad, and we'll send out something for tax purposes. All right, let me just check for questions real quick. All right, so here's a question. Dave English. If you use heirloom seeds, can you harvest them for the next year? Also, what are some commonly planted vegetables that should not be planted next to each other? So, Dave, I don't know what plants shouldn't be planted next to each other. Some people probably have a little more experience. I'll let you know in the chat here. I often say experiment, plant what you want to plant. Heirloom seeds is more of a classification, and the classification varies. For some people, it's a stable cultivar, which means if you plant that tomato seed, you grow a tomato, you take the seeds, you dry the seeds, you plant that seed next year, you get the same exact variety. The seed is stable. Then they go with heirlooms. Sometimes if they're 25 years or older, people consider it an heirloom. Some people consider it 50 years old. So this variety's had been around for 50 years. Some people go to 75 years. So an heirloom is just a kind of a category. What you're talking about is a seed that's not a hybrid. If you buy hybrids, which are perfectly fine, They're not GMOs. They're not bad. They're just made by people crossing tomato varieties and trying to create something cool. If you buy a hybrid, that seed you collect isn't stable, and you may get different variations in it. So you just want to make sure it's an heirloom tomato, like you said, or a stable cultivar is the other name for it. Thank you, Happy Rock. Very appreciated for the donation. Monique says, anything grow well in potato bags besides potatoes? Those are pretty much fabric pots. Based on the size, you can grow just about anything you want. DD58 Patriot, I like fish emulsion. It seems to work instantly. Thanks for recommending on your channel. Yeah, so fish emulsion, again, I want to stress, brand new gardeners, water-soluble fertilizer is considered fast release. That's because the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that's soaking into the earth can be immediately pulled in by the root system. The nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium have basically, that fertilizer is basically rotted down, usually organic matter when it's an organic fertilizer, or it's chemically set up in a form when people make it so that the plant can absorb it. So it's really fast acting. I've had, when I plant earlier in the year and the soil's not 60 degrees like it is now, sometimes my plants struggle. So I use a lot of water soluble fertilizer. Here's a good question too, and this would be appropriate. So for everybody, Kelly O'Brien, is there anything that can be done about blossom drop due to high temperatures? And usually that's tomato plants, pepper plants, but other plants can do it. Tomatillos probably. So yes, so we've got the beautiful 60-degree soil temperature now, or higher. We have 70, 80-degree days now. Perfect for all these plants, these 3 suggestions, to take off and thrive. So new gardeners, get started. But when those temperatures start getting into the 90s, 95, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the plant has kind of a sensitivity to it. So it's not just the air temperature around the plant, it's that sun beating down and baking the roots and really heating that soil, sometimes into the 70s and 80s. And we're just talking the top couple of inches. The plant gets the signal, I'm shutting down. It drops its blossoms, it aborts tomatoes, it aborts peppers. Sometimes the tomato flowers dry up. It's saying it's way too hot. I'm going into survival mode. I am not going to produce until it cools. So keep them watered. So you definitely can put down mulch, grass clippings, protect the surface of the soil. So when that sun is hitting, the mulch keeps moisture in, it keeps it cooler. And shade cloth, where if you're in a place, Arizona, parts of California, anywhere where you get the beating 90-degree, 100-degree suns, you can get shade cloth. You can look online, just look up shade cloth. And you want like a 50% shade cloth or 60% shade cloth. That means it blocks 60% of the sun coming through. And you can just put that up. The sun will hit it. It doesn't go all the way through to the ground. Under the shade cloth can be up to like 20 degrees cooler. Your plants are going to keep producing that way. And they let in enough sun that your plants are going to be able to get photosynthesis and grow and stuff like that. You can set it up so you have the shade cloth down during the morning. It gets more morning sun. And maybe you put it up from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock when the sun is the strongest. Devin Gray, when is it too hot to fertilize? It's never really too hot to fertilize. If it's really hot out, you want to just pour the water soluble around the base of the plant. The dry organic granular, you would just scatter over the surface. You would water it in. That's not going to do much for a couple of weeks anyway. So you can't, really not fertilize because it's too hot. If your plants kind of the leaves go limp and they're struggling from the heat, you don't want to pour water or anything in there. You don't want to do any sprays. Just do that in the evening when it cools off. If you're going to be wetting the leaves of the plants, and they'll be fine. So Ab Lincoln, what is your understanding about macroplastics found in fruits and vegetables? Do you use other polyethylene plastics or aluminum water? I don't know anything about that. Sorry. It's sounds interesting to me. I would have to look into it and kind of understand how they're suggesting it may get into our fruits. If we're growing vegetables, if we're growing fruits, I don't see that being an issue. If they're being processed somehow, maybe things get into that, but I don't understand it enough at this point to really fully comment on it. And what I like to do, like, I don't know if that's true or false or somewhere in between, but I like to start doing research on it and getting a couple of points of view and really trying to understand what that means, because it could have impact on what I do. Michael C. question, just started getting tomatoes on my determinants. How long do they usually take to reach the 2-week harvesting period? That's just going to vary greatly. Conditions outside, the plant itself, rain, temperature. So just be patient. They know what to do and they'll do it. I wish I could give you a better answer. Well, Amazing Grace 77 asks, why do plants not grow? New gardener. So that's a really good question. And I only chuckled because it's such a big question. So I can't answer all of that here. There are lots of reasons. You're planting the wrong variety. You're planting spinach now and it's summer. They don't like the warm weather. Maybe you're not watering enough. Maybe there's not enough fertilizer. Maybe they get some sort of disease. The best way to go about it is to keep that question in mind and kind of do a journal of what you do. If you're kind of doing what we did today, you're opening up a space 3 feet by 8 feet, you're loosening it up, you're planting the seed, you're watering every other day, you're using a water-soluble fertilizer, your choice, maybe every 7 days to start, those plants should grow. If they're not growing, that's when you start going down a list of what might be affecting it. And I don't really know unless I kind of know your whole process. TT Happy Rock question, anything to be careful of when using grow bags? I'm doing lots of container gardening this year due to row work impacting my yard. Containers, the biggest thing with grow bags is they dry out pretty quickly. So you want to make sure you match the size of the pot for how big your vegetable plant's going to be at maturity. That being said, like for instance, I used to say 10 gallons for a indeterminate tomato. Now I say 20 gallons. You're going to have to water more. And this is where I would really keep up on water-soluble fertilizer. Fish emulsion, maybe every 7 to 10 days when the plants get to mid-size and bigger, because these plants will suck the water out of the pots and the nutrients out of the pots super fast when they're mid-size and larger. And you may have to water 2 times or even 3 times a day. So you really have to stay up on it. That's the greatest caution, I think, for containers. All right, so it's 4 o'clock. We'll go to 4:15. I like to go about an hour. We'll answer more questions and stuff like that. And again, if you're in a position to donate, please donate to Community Ecology Institute, which is linked to this live video. Let's see. B. Bundy. My zucchini starts growing and then die. Do you know what could be going on? Also, can I use to kill or prevent baby worms? Thank you. So baby worms are caterpillars on the leaves. I use neem oil. I also use insect dust. The dust that I use mostly is spinosad. It's organic. And I dust the leaf. The caterpillars crawl through it. And it kills them off in a couple of days. I don't know what's killing your zucchini. I have like one right now that's thriving. I just did a Friday morning ramblings, and you'll see the squash plant that's struggling. I don't know why. I've checked it for vine borers. I've checked it for problems, but I'm just going to remove it. So that's the other thing. Maybe we'll wrap up this video with that thought. If you're growing a zucchini plant, it's dying off, or a cucumber plant, it's dying off, try to save it. After about a week, if it doesn't look better, pull it out, put those seeds in. Zucchinis Well, zucchinis actually isn't plural. Somebody corrected me before. Adding the S doesn't make it plural because zucchini itself is plural. So zucchini dye, put in some zucchini seeds, and just replace the plants. And that's what you want to do. Like, we're going to have the vine borer coming through. So I have my squash in now, producing. It's going to die off. I'll put in some new seeds. It will take off. It'll be producing again in 30 to 40 days. It'll probably die. And I'll put in another planting of zucchini and squash. So that's something you can do. That's why it's not too late to start a garden if you're concerned about your food security. Get everything in right now for June. If that zucchini plant dies, if those beans die, we're going to put in more bean and zucchini seeds come whatever, middle of July, and we'll keep going. Tomato plants, it gets tough. If you have a tomato plant and it's getting later in the season, they need a good 60 or 70 days to really start growing and producing. So some plants you can't really replant, but definitely cucumbers, zucchini, squash, beans, okra. I mean, there's probably dozens more of plants that you can just keep seeding throughout the summer. Yeah, and Urban Chicken Mama just said it in a nicer, simpler way than I just rambled on. She said always have backup plants. So right now you might have great squash, zucchini, cucumbers going. You can pot up in like a little red Solo cup, put in some soil, put in some seeds, put them on a shady side of your yard. You don't want those cups baking in 8-hour sun, and just grow transplants. And if your plants die off, you have backup plants that have already germinated. You just put them in and you keep going. All right. I mean, more questions. We got some time. The next series or the next video in this series will kind of just add on to what we started today, getting that garden started. And if you're watching this as a replay, you can do this through the end of June. You can do this in the beginning of July. You have time. As long as your frost date isn't really into maybe later September, October, you still have plenty of time to grow summer crops. We can even put in some winter squash like butternut or acorn, and they just store really well. They wouldn't go into the bed we designed today, but maybe next time we'll talk about adding another 4 feet and growing butternut squash or acorn squash. And those are called winter squash. They store really well. Hubbard squash is an example. There's all kinds of different squash you can grow that store really well for like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I mean, you can just pick them and put them in a cool place and they last. Sam, question, can you maybe do a series about canning and preserving? Would be nice to see what to do. So I am just learning how to do that. I have a friend who's a chef. Maybe I will bring her in and we will do some canning because I have to learn myself. And I don't really like doing videos until I've been working and doing something for a good year or two. This way I can talk about it more from a perspective of success rather than struggling with it. So canning is on my list to learn about this year. All right. Another question, the Central Texas Homestead, Mike and Rochelle, struggling with heat. I mean, you are hitting it fine, it looks like, with the fish emulsion, the seaweed fertilizer. It's not really a watering or feeding issue. It's the heat. So if you haven't tried it, it's really shade cloth. You want a shade cloth canopy protecting the soil from getting baked by the sun. Certainly put down mulch if you haven't done that. That makes a difference. But a combination of mulch and shade cloth cools that space greatly, and those summer crops won't think that they have to kind of go into survival mode, and they will continue to produce if you try that out. All right, I'm still going to hang around for 10 minutes and just answer questions. Ab Lincoln says, have you tried shade cloth a few inches above the ground? No, but that would work. I mean, I have done that years back with burlap. I've set that up maybe 6 inches above the soil just to get things germinated. And that's a good point too, is if you're trying to germinate the seeds now and you're in a hotter area, and that's actually a great question. So in my description, I'm saying put the seeds down, keep them watered. Watering them every day, every other day, will keep that area cool and they're going to germinate. But maybe even, you know, a sheer curtain or I hate getting older because you just lose words. A bed sheet. That's what I'm trying to think of. Just a thin, you know, white sheet across that planting area will keep it cool. And that can help the plant germinate without being pounded by the sun. Light will still get through. That's not going to be an issue. But anyway, it's going to keep it cooler, give that plant a chance to establish, keep it watered, and then you can remove whatever you're using to shade it, and your plants will do fine. But that's only if you're in a place where it's like 90, 95, 100, and you just put in seeds and it's just baking the ground. Kaylee, someone said they're going to use pine shavings. So it's a little bit of a myth that pine shavings, pine leaves are too acidic for the garden. They are more acidic, but your plants grow in a wide pH range, from, you know, lower acidity to higher alkalinity. So you would have to use so much to change it that you can just use it as mulch and not worry about it. Hubert Hopscotch, I get this question a lot. Can you use human urine to fertilize tomatoes? Yes, you can. I've learned over the last month that if you mix urine, 1 part urine, 10 parts water, you can use it. Works perfectly fine. And I'm just looking at all the comments. I am glad you guys are talking with each other. This is how you help people. I mean, all this great knowledge coming from you all, people will be able to read this and hopefully they get their gardens started. Again, I just want to encourage people to get started. So if some of you are listening and you haven't started the garden yet, you do not have to know everything. Learn as you go. Nature has been growing seeds for millions of years. It knows what to do. Sunlight, earth, water, some sort of fertilizer, the plants are going to grow. You being the fifth component, starting to take care of it, giving it a little bit more water when there's water not available, will keep that plant from just kind of surviving and getting by to really thriving and taking off and being its best self as a vegetable plant. But that means you're going to get bigger harvest. So we kind of take what nature already does and we just make sure the plants get more than they need when like a drought comes, or maybe if they need more fertilizer, or when it's too hot, like people have been saying, we put shade cloth down. So we can manage conditions a little bit better and get a garden that really thrives. Julianne Mazzoni, thank you for summarizing it. Just plant, absolutely right. Frank Barnwell says, mention your book. I did. I'll mention it again. The Modern Homestead Garden. You can get it on Amazon. It really will help a new gardener get started. I tried to keep, you know, the writing kind of simple, basic approach. You get a lot of information, but it really breaks it down so you're not overwhelmed. And I guarantee if you get that 3 foot by 8 foot, you know, row dug in your earth or in a friend's earth, or, you know, finding place to grow, you're going to enjoy it and it's going to take off. We'll talk about in future episodes pest control, disease control and stuff like that. Just expect that's going to happen. You're going to have some loss, but the garden wants to give to you. We just have to help it along, and we just have to have strategies to work around managing pests and disease. All right, I think we'll wrap up there. I greatly appreciate all the donations, every one of them from $5 to $250. That is amazing help. It's going to make a difference. And just what we're talking about today, when that barn is renovated, we let me pause. I'm so grateful for the money that came in. When that barn is renovated, we will actually have seminars there that are free, and we'll be taking people in, inviting people in to just learn how to garden that may not have a whole lot. And we're going to be doing, the training, the teaching, getting them seeds, getting them plants, and just getting them started so that they can find a passion and have more food security. So this really, really matters to me. So thank you so much. All right. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Father's Day. Thank you so much. And I will be doing part 2 or episode 2 of Growing Your Own Food Security next week at 3:00. So I'll put something out earlier. Maybe we'll get more people, but I really appreciate how everybody's helping each other here. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your Sunday.